Hello, and welcome to Generation G.R.I.T. I'm your host, Sedrick Avenue. Chances are you've heard the term cancel culture, as it's becoming a term used in our everyday lives. Something we hear less about, though, is restorative justice. Tonight, we'll learn about both from the perspective of 3 local high school students and an expert on the matter to give us some added insight. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So my name is Jeremy Portillo, and I'm coming from York International.
My name is Layla Rodriguez-Johnson, and I'm coming from Rangeview.
I'm Abigail LaCrue, and I'm from West High School.
And you guys are all representing the Denver Urban Debate League, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And that's the DUDL for short?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we have a video here. We're going to check out your mission.
Denver Urban Debate League programs break barriers for underserved students by enriching educational and personal outcomes. Urban Debate engages students, offering them experiences they can't always get in the classroom. Speech and debate programs teach students to develop a growth mindset, a set of attitudes that's strongly associated with success in life. In fostering academic skills and resiliency, Doodle exists to ensure students graduate from and excel in high school and beyond. Doodle students become active and engaged citizens, well-versed in issues of equity and public policy, equipped to interact critically with the world around them, make a difference in their communities, and add more diverse voices to our civil discourse. Over the last 10 years, almost 100% of Doodle participants graduated on time, a radical improvement over their school and district averages. Over half of Doodle students enroll in college, outperforming school district rates by 24%. Some even receive debate scholarships to institutions like Yale and the University of Denver.
Rihanna Roston is joining us virtually. Rihanna is a passionate DEI and anti-racism educator with a background in education, human service, and social justice. Rihanna guides her work under 4 core values: identity, diversity, restorative practice, and power. She's also the founder of the DEI and Anti-Racism Development Program. It's called Commune in Color, which applies these core values to the lives and work of individuals, families, communities, and organizations fighting for equality. Rihanna, thanks for being here tonight. Can you help us kick off with some context? What's the relationship between cancel culture and restorative justice?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to join you all today. For me, the word relationship is an interesting word to use, but I guess there's always a relationship, even amongst things that are opposites. And so for me, when I think about cancel culture is this space where your story ends at the mistake you made, whereas restorative justice is a space where you really get to think about how your mistake is supposed to go into you learning more and being a better person and showing up more for your community. So those are some of the differences for me in the relationship between the two.
What are some of the consequences that occur when society rejects someone?
Oh, I think sometimes what we see, and I think this could be represented in many different ways, is that that person who feels rejected kind of goes further into that rejection space, right? And so a lot of times, let's even use our justice system. What we see is that a lot of times people who go to prison and then leave prison and are not welcome into the community, maybe they're not able to get jobs, maybe their family situations are broken and they're not reintegrated. What happens is that a lot of people end up back in those circumstances or back in prison, for example. And so for me, what I see happen in a lot of times just in community, when people aren't welcome back into that community, the lessons that could have went into that person being different aren't learned. And that person kind of gets stuck in being ostracized as opposed to learning and doing something different to be a part of that community.
Now, let's get some insight from our panel. I saw you agree. I saw you nodding your head the whole time.
Well, I do agree with a lot of the statements that she made because I think it really depends on certain people, and like if you don't feel welcome in your community, you know, it's kind of hard to feel you can build or grow or go onto a different path. And when you are more welcomed in to your community, you might want to make that change, you know, make that difference to go on that different path. And I feel like with restorative justice, that gives you that chance, you know, to be able to go in and be able to make that difference, to make you know, a chance to go on a different path.
Right.
And you're not stuck on that same path.
Right. You were agreeing later. You weren't agreeing at first, then you started nodding.
Yeah, I started nodding because something that Rihanna said about reintegrating into society, I feel like that's such an important thing. I think that cancel culture can be really harmful for people, especially when you're taking them out of a community that they were born into because of maybe one mistake that they did. I think that it's super important to allow people to be able to grow and to make the changes that they need to make in their lives. And I think that second chances are a super big thing, and that a lot of us wouldn't continue to be a part of society now if we weren't at some point in our lives given a second chance.
You ever had a second chance?
I've definitely needed a lot of second chances. If I didn't get second chances, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right.
Definitely.
Do you have any personal experiences that make you interested in this topic? Do any of you?
Cancel culture was first kind of brought to me when I was watching YouTube around, you know, like, you know, you hear about your favorite YouTuber and they got canceled. So I was like, I wonder who, you know, what is cancel culture? What is this? Like, why are they getting canceled? So I went and did some research on my own and got to find out, like, you know, like there were things that this person had done that, you know, were not like, you know, good, like not good thing and morally. And so they got them canceled on the internet. And so I started to see how other people were becoming canceled. And I feel like with restorative justice, like some of these people were able to come out and like, you know, apologize, talk about how they made the mistakes and how later on they changed those mistakes and have gotten onto a different path because they had second chances with being like talked to, being told like, you know, these aren't right, you know, so they were able to change their past mistakes. But I've seen this mostly in media when it comes to like movie directors or, you know, like even songwriters.
They get canceled like every week.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because of past things that they've said or things that they say recently, you know.
Do you think that if you said something 10 years ago, is it possible that you're a different person in the time that passed?
I think it depends on what actions you've taken to fix and learn from what you said previously. Like, I know that there have been some instances of people being canceled for saying the N-word when they were like in the 5th or 6th grade, and then they go on 10, 15 years later and they don't say that anymore. They've learned from they've learned from the mistakes that they've made in the past, and I think that those people don't deserve to be canceled if you show a certain level of growth.
Right. Do you ever want to cancel anybody? Have you ever been like, you should be canceled?
Well, fortunately, I kind of stay off of social media as a whole,
Smart.
but I hear about it a lot.
Right.
And I think similar to what Abigail said is that a lot of people, you know, you hear about like YouTubers or politicians getting canceled. And I've always wondered, like, is that really the best way that they could have gone about this? So I definitely don't see that as like a reasonable solution to anything.
I think that just social networks in general are the driving force in a lot of this. A lot of this never gets heard or seen if you guys don't repost it, retweet it, remix it, TikTok it, you know?
Yeah.
Rihanna, what does restorative justice look like in action?
Yeah, I heard someone say, and this is obviously something that's easier said than done, but I heard someone say one time long ago, that restorative justice really means that no one is discardable. And so in action, to me, that really looks like we've done everything we possibly can to put a learning opportunity in place to make sure that these individuals can grow. We've really went above and beyond to maintain our community, because we believe that no one is discardable, that people can change and people can do better and people can be a part of our community. And so for me, it really means like those above and beyond efforts to maintain our community. And depending upon what your community is, how you do that can be diverse. your methodology for maintaining your community can be diverse, but just making it intentional that everyone is going to be a part of our community and we're going to flesh out our differences optimally is really what's key for me.
How do you guys think this helps the individual?
I think that restorative justice, giving someone a second chance, giving them or letting them know that they're not disposable, that they matter, is such an important thing. And I think everybody deserves to know that they belong someplace in the world.
Yeah, and with that, I think, when people get canceled, they kind of get ostracized, and a lot of times I think that can lead to like anger in that person. So let's say you did something wrong and now nobody likes you, nobody talks to you. Now you did something wrong and now you're upset about it. You're not gonna that doesn't give you the opportunity to improve.
Right.
Or like you don't want to improve.
Right.
Because if you feel that everyone doesn't like you.
I agree. I feel like that could build a lot of resentment in somebody towards their community, and then that could build into other things, snowball effect.
Right.
And I feel like you said, I completely agree. Like, nobody is, like what Rihanna said too, like nobody is discardable in that aspect when you talk about restorative justice in that way. And I mean, that's good because everybody needs to feel that they belong at least somewhere,
How do you guys think that restorative justice supports the community as a whole?
It gives the whole community a second chance, because if you're unable to give people second chances, like she said, anybody can be discardable.
Right.
And if you're able to give that community build as together, you're not leaving anybody behind, you're helping each other, and you're not looking at it as, wow, we're just going to discard this one person because they made that one mistake. It can help everybody think, what are they going through? What is happening in their mind at that moment? It makes everybody think of together, think of what are they thinking, what are they want to do, do they want to make a change? It brings that communication in, because if you have all these questions, you have to talk through them, and be able to build as a community and not just as an individual.
If one person's broke in the group, if y'all are a group, and if we're all a group and I'm broken, is the whole group broken? Or am I just broken?
Depends on the way you think about it. Because
I only ask because, I think that giving people second chances is a reflection of how we feel about each other. Like, if you don't give people second chances, then it's like you don't like people, you don't want people around, Mm-hmm. But if you're giving people second chances, if you got a puppy, you're going to give a puppy a million chances because you want it around, right? Mm-hmm. I think that we lack that same compassion. Mm-hmm. How do you think restorative justice affects the community as a whole, or helps the community, or does
I think restorative justice really aims at giving healing to the victim as well. And I think like the judicial system currently doesn't really allow for that. Sending somebody off to prison because you like killed my cousin or something doesn't really give me a sense of fulfillment. Now I just know that you've gone to prison, but I think restorative justice really gives the opportunity for me to heal and for you to really like atone for your sin, like according to what you did wrong. Like going to jail is just such a blanket punishment. And I think if you have something that is specific to your crime, you can learn from it.
We've mentioned, I feel like it's gravitating towards jail. We've mentioned jail, incarceration a couple times. How do you think the current criminal justice system affects these practices that we're talking about? How does jail affect restorative justice, or vice versa? Do you think that you can go into a jail and talk to a violent offender and tell them that you're going to give them a second chance in society and that they can go out there and function in society? Right. Do you think that? Because all crimes are different.
Yeah. Right. I think it's something, as you were saying, all crimes are different. I think it's something that depends on who it is. I think for the majority, like smaller, non-violent crimes, I think it's very easy for you to sense them back into society and then be able to be like a contributing member of society. I think for people who have committed more violent crimes, it'll take more more kind of work with restorative justice to be able to implement them back into society. But I also think that sending them to prison for the rest of their lives with no form of like rehabilitation is not doing anybody any good, especially them and especially the victims.
On a smaller scale, even in like school, you had mentioned when we briefly spoke that you don't see kids get suspended as much anymore. They have different ways of taking care of it. But you also mentioned that it doesn't work for all of the kids, right? Right?
Yeah, I feel like restorative justice can work for certain people. It's just not something that you could say is going to work for everybody. Everybody is so different that when you are talking about restorative justice, you can tell one person, you know, like not to do something, and that person may listen, but the next person might be completely different and not, you know, listen that same way. And so it's not, you know, kind of set for everybody. Some people might need an alternative way to, you know, kind of learn that that's wrong. It's like the saying I was speaking about earlier is don't touch the hot stove. Some people and everybody, you know, might just need to touch the hot stove to learn that it's hot, you know, and some people just don't like to be told, you know, so it's kind of, it's like a different kind of thing for each individual person, you know, just like the circumstance of like the crime, it really depends on like, you know, the crime and the person, really the circumstance for sure. And it's not kind of just one fits all.
Rihanna, how do you think our current criminal justice system affects these practices?
Yeah, I could use a real example. I'm currently doing some work with the Conflict Center with the Denver District's Attorney's Office around how we can implement the restorative practice philosophy and the restorative justice philosophy, especially in those cases where you all are talking about like with these lower level spaces, like and lower level crimes where people are going through a system that maybe isn't appropriate. For me, when I think about restorative justice, I have to always name that it's not a quick fix, it's not an easy fix, it's not something that goes with every single situation. And on the opposite coin, our justice system as it's designed as well too isn't a quick fix or an easy fix or something that should go with every situation. And so I like to think about like people being nuanced and diverse and like all of those approaches needing a different approach. And so I like to think of restorative justice as a way to say maybe the regular criminal justice system as it is, this type of punishment for this type of crime doesn't make sense. And so we need another alternative to respond to this. And so I like to really think about like our justice system just needing to be more expansive and these restorative justice efforts being one additional tool that's being developed so that we're not just giving everybody the same thing because different people need different things and different situations need different things as well.
Rihanna, can you share a story about a time in which you saw these practices work?
Definitely, definitely. So in my work with the Denver District Attorney's Office, what we would find more times than not is that there would be, and I'm trying to maintain confidentiality with these cases as well too. But there's definitely matters where someone is in there for something that you would maybe feel is like minuscule in somebody's grand scheme of their life and the mistakes they can make. Maybe graffitiing like a neighborhood, for example, right? And so a tough consequence could be like having this on your record and this preventing you from maybe getting a scholarship somewhere, this preventing you from doing things. And we did have people who, and a student in particular, who was like up against a lot of odds for doing this. And what the restorative justice system was able to do in lieu of like having that, what's the word, that conviction on his label was able to really make it so that he could go through a process of actually thinking about how can the harm be repaired? What can I do to make amends for the harm that I caused? And so it's not just me getting a consequence and doing my time per se, but like I'm actually having to make amends with those I've harmed. And now because of this, I don't have to carry the stigma and the label that will prevent me from moving on with my future, from getting that scholarship, from going to do the other things that I wanted to do. And so for me, I think those are the moments, especially where it's like, we can stop somebody's opportunities way before it's necessary. If we could, when we just jump to a harsh consequence that maybe isn't reflective of what's happened, and a greater lesson could be learned on the other side of it.
What do you guys think about that?
I definitely agree. Now that I'm in my senior year, or we all are in our senior year, you start looking at applications, and I think every application I've looked at asks if you have like criminal history or if you got into suspension or whatever, and then you have to write and explain that, and I'm sure that probably negatively impacts your applications. So now
That's on every job application too.
right, so there you go. So like she said with the graffiti example, let's say I go and graffiti something. Now that's gonna like affect me for the rest of my life when really, it could be just a foolish mistake, and I could go and like through restorative justice, like clean off graffiti or something that directly deals with what I did, and then have that cleared off so I don't have to deal with that for the rest of my life.
Do you think that it's important to clear things, to say it how you just said it, to like clear your conscience? Like, do you think that it's better to make amends if you do the graffiti, to clean the graffiti? Do you think that that's more valuable than having to do something else?
Yeah, most definitely. I think it makes more sense for me to, as a graffiti person, if I go around doing that, to clean graffiti rather than pay a fine or go to jail. Like, those punishments don't really fit the crime that I did. So then that way you more directly interact with what you did, and I think that probably makes you less likely to reoffend.
So how do you all hope to see the practice of restorative justice develop in society?
I feel like I hope to like see like more like second chances, to see more people feel that they can be welcome even after making a mistake, and
Right.
that they're not going to be shunned, those kinds of things. But also to learn that if you continue to keep doing those things, it's not like you're going to continue to be just let go off the hook or, have an easier way out. There
Right.
will be probably further consequences going forward, but I feel like it's good to have that first step of, okay, you're not going to be punished right off the bat, and, you're not going to be shunned from society in that sense right away because you made one mistake. I hope to see that happen more in with other people, because then it grows for younger ones to see higher role models like, wow, they made a mistake but they made a difference, to
Right.
make that change, and people can change, because I feel like that's also a very big question is, can people change?
Right. Do you, in your personal life even, how do you feel somebody paints on your house? Not even an insult, some kid paints on your house. Do you think that it's very important for that person to have to come clean it off? Do you think that they should have to come look at you and talk to you about it? Or do you think that it should be up to the police or somebody to figure out who did it and what happened?
I definitely think that keeping the police out of it as much as possible is always the best thing to go, or best way to go, because as we were talking about before, having one small incident on your record can affect the rest of your life. It can affect what school you get into, and it can affect how you get a job or if you get a job and stuff like that. I definitely think that having that person come back and apologize for it and cleaning up what they did, trying their best to remedy the situation is the best way to go. And making sure that they're held accountable for what they did, but also give them a chance to make what they did right, instead of just canceling their entire life and not giving them the opportunity to grow from the situation.
You're the principal. You're the principal of the school. It's your senior year now, right?
Right.
You're the principal next year. You come back, you're the principal. What do you tell freshmen about cancel culture? What do you tell freshmen about restorative justice?
I think in schools as a whole, and obviously I'm not a principal, I don't really know
You're the
logistics.
principal. I just told you you're the principal now.
Okay.
What would you tell them?
I think as a principal, I'd want to have a system where students, like I mentioned earlier, where they more directly impact or interact with what they did. So instead of just suspending everyone, because I don't think, similar to the justice system of going to jail, I don't think that really teaches students the right lesson. I think I would want the freshmen or anyone in the school to, instead of just being suspended, interact with what they did and really try to make amends with the crime that they committed specifically.
All right. Your sister.
My sister.
What would you tell your sister you learned about restorative justice so far versus cancel culture? Because she's different. She
Yeah.
doesn't have your same opinions, right?
Yeah, I feel like I would talk to her about how in cancel culture, like anybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes, you know, even though me and her are very different, I still make mistakes, you know, and that her mistakes can always, you know, kind of be like she can look back on them, and if she decides that she wants to go back and like work on those things, that she definitely can, because people like me, I'm for sure always going to be there for her, you know, and I always want to be there for her for sure. I would definitely tell her that cancel culture, for sure, that when she makes a mistake, that to go back in restorative justice, and she has to go back and, you know, look and really think about what she had did, and like he said, go back and really like sorry, I can't think of the word that you used. Like kind of, what is the word? I can't think of the word.
Oh, well, it's fine. What do we say? Use another word. What are you trying to say?
So it's like, so kind of doing something to kind of like, I can't think of any of the words right now, sorry.
It's all right, it's all right.
So instead of like whatever she did, like, you know, whatever she did to make that mistake, to go back and be able to like, you know, clean up what she did, or go back and apologize and really think about it, you know, because I feel like when she gets punished in other ways, she doesn't really get to think about it, sit there and think about what she had done or what she had said, or, you know, what was anything about the situation. She thinks more of, oh, well, it happened and now I'm in trouble and now I'm doing this, you know, and I feel for her to hear that, you know, like, go back and you're going to think about it, you know, like in that situation of what you did wrong. And I think that to her would be a big difference of, you know, she has to think about it. Now she has to think about it, and she's in that situation now. You know, it's not just her thinking back on it and being like, well, it happened.
Well, I think that you guys are all very insightful, and you got a lot to say about cancel culture and restorative justice. And I think accountability is a thing that people don't look at. Mm-hmm. And I really hope that people listen to students and to kids in the community more than they speak for you all, because they don't sit in the classes, they don't deal in the schools. Your teachers don't even sit in the classes how you sit in the classes. That's all the time we have for now. Thank you to our panelists and our panel expert for sharing space with us tonight. I hope you will continue your research on this very important issue. I'm Sedrick Avenue, and on behalf of all of us here at PBS 12, thank you for joining us.